W7, welcome to a very special chat with our good friend Brad Fischer, the head coach at UW-Oshkosh women's basketball. Coach Fish is a great friend of mine. He's been a great friend of girls and women's sports throughout the state of Wisconsin and has built a tremendous program for the Titans at UW-Oshkosh. And Coach, first and foremost, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking some time to talk about a very important topic with us today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you calling and checking with me on this. And I'm glad to see you back in the chair with a mic in front of your mouth and feeling better. So I think I speak for everybody that's excited to see you back on the screen.
Well, I appreciate it, and one of the things that really occurred to me when I was when I since I've been out is the kind of the mental strain that's involved. Of course, it was certainly a physical battle, but I would say just as important is the mental side of it. Uh, and it just got me thinking, how much are we talking about mental health for our young female athletes? How much focus and attention are we putting on it compared to what we should put on it? And again, because of the success you've had at Oshkosh, and because of the high quality kids that I know you have, I know mostly the kids on your team. I thought it would be a great conversation, not only at the college level but also the high school level, because you get these kids right out of high school and you get to see firsthand kind of what their mental makeup looks like, and really where they're successful, and certainly there's cases where kids haven't been successful. And I want to just talk about that kind of balance, that kind of uh, mindset, and really what you've seen that's been successful and what you've seen that may not be as successful. So that was kind of my talk, or my thoughts on our talk today. And again, I appreciate you making the time. So let's just start by getting into, when you are recruiting, um, a high school senior. And again, we all know, I know the physical attributes you're looking for. I know the kind of kids that you're looking for. And one thing you've talked to me all the time about whenever we talk is it's got to be the right fit for the athlete. And I love your take on that. And I've used it, by the way, many, many, many times over the past few years when talking about kids looking at the next level. Can you talk to me about what you see and what's important from a mental health standpoint as you start looking at kids and looking at, hey, is this going to be the right fit for our program?
I think that piece of, I mean, this is year 13 for me here. Going back, it was 5 years at Parkside, three at Lacrosse. So I'm in the 20s now. And this was not a conversation that we had 13 years ago. This wasn't a conversation that we had 8 years ago, which when you look back at it, it's kind of sad that it has taken this long. Like it didn't just become tougher. I mean, it's become tougher for sure. I think social media is a huge piece of it. I think the perception of other people, how we feel, other people look at us, and how judged we feel is a part of that. But this is now, I think these last 5 or 6 years, and especially around COVID, but even before that, we've spent a lot of time at that point talking about balance of life and not making sure basketball wasn't the only thing that they identified themselves as a basketball player or as an athlete. And now it's really shifted to, I think our conversations here are way more specific about what the things are that are causing our anxiety or causing our depression or causing all those things. And the hard part in recruiting is a lot of times you don't have a strong enough relationship yet for them to be comfortable to tell you with the things they've struggled with. And I think we've tried to be really intentional about our questions in the process. And I offer up that I go to therapy, and therapy has done wonders for my life and how I do at my job, but also how I am as a husband and how am as a coach. And I think we've opened some doors by being really transparent with our struggles or my struggles. And I think we've started to identify some players in the process that are a little bit more willing to talk about the stuff they've struggled with. And it's just becoming more and more prevalent. And we've got two yellow chairs in my office that get a lot of use during the season for me and whoever else comes in. And when we break through to that point of being able to come in and have tears and talk about the stuff you struggle with, the journey goes so much better. So we've tried to make sure that when they walk in, they know if they have struggled with something, or if they need to talk about something, that they know their coach has probably gone through it already. And that's been a pivot in trying to make sure we don't confuse being tough with thinking that you've got to bury those feelings or hide that stuff or act like things don't bother you. And I think that's a big piece, that when they come to us, they've been the best player, one of the best players, usually in a good program, and they've always felt like they kind of had to be the tough face of their team or their program. And the reality is, the best players sometimes are struggling more than the girls that don't play as much, or don't score as many points, or don't get as much, opportunity. And everyone's struggling with their own thing. And I think we've done way too much of a disservice to want to hide those things and sell it as toughness.
Those are that's a great example, and I got to witness it firsthand with you and with your program when we went up to Marquette, Michigan together a couple of years ago. And after the games, even on the bus ride home, I know some players came up individually, and you called a couple up to just talk to them privately, on the trip home. And where does that mindset for you come from in making in being intentional about the mental health side of it as opposed to just the basketball side of it?
You know, this has been we're having a historic year for our program. I mean, we're 19-1 and ranked in the top five, and this has probably been one of the hardest years for me personally, because I know I've got a bunch of talented girls that aren't playing as many minutes as I want them to play. And I know that has an effect on their mental health. I know the stress of becoming an upperclassman, getting close to graduating. Like, we have all these factors here from 18 to 22, that lead to struggle. And the intentionality part, like, there's a balance obviously with what the rest of the job entails, of making sure we're ready to play games and getting out recruiting and doing all those things. But there's also just a vibe when you walk into the film room or to practice, and trying to make sure everyone's as okay as you can. And I think that piece for us has become a bigger focus. And I know we're still not great at it. I know there's still time that goes by where we haven't met with someone that needs a meeting. And again, it comes down to the relationship of the comfort level of someone to be able to come in and tell us that they need help. But because it's on my mind a lot, because I'm either going to a therapy session, or working on stuff or meditation or whatever else for myself, it's kind of always front of mind for me, that it's just part of my day to day. And I think that piece, especially as people struggle, makes it a little bit easier to not forget how important it is. And I just had it last week. I mean, Coach Staples, our assistant, was out for 3 months in the fall with Lyme's disease, and she had a bout with Bell's palsy. So we were going with just our volunteer assistants, and the mental toll for her having to deal with that, being away from her team, us as a staff not having her every day, and players. And I had a breakdown last week, just thanking our players for
Oh
getting
my
us through
gosh.
that as coaches. And I think, like, I know for a fact our relationship as a program has grown as we've become more vulnerable with each other. And that was not who I was or who our program was in 2013 through 2017, 2018, when we were building it and we were worried about winning games and being tough and doing those things. And as that's changed, I think our relationships have changed, and it's been it's been more geared towards taking care of each other and caring about each other. And I would have said in 2016, 17 that we cared about each other. It's such a different level when you're vulnerable and you let each other know that you're having a hard time, but you're going to get through it together. And we didn't talk like that the same way, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think that's been one of the parts that it makes it harder right now for me feeling like I'm letting players down when they don't get the opportunity that they're working for and trying to earn. But it also makes it more special when we win big games, or we have great moments, or we get the GPA, or we got senior day coming up on Saturday, and I'm starting to write their speeches about what their paths have been like. And I think there's a vulnerability that comes with handling our mental health, and you do have to be intentional about it, but you also have to get to the point where you're comfortable talking about it with each other. And I think that's an advantage that we have, because we do see the girls a lot every day at the college level. We are kind of their pseudo parents in that sense. But I also owe it to these parents to try to take care of their daughters. And that's a responsibility we take very seriously. It's why we care most about retention over anything else we do. But I'm encouraging all of them to be vulnerable and tell us when they're struggling, and tell us what's bothering them, and whether it's not playing as much as they want, or school's hard, or whatever is going on at home. Like, everyone's got their own thing, and there's just been a stigma to bury it and be tough in sports, and that part we can get rid of. And our team is proof that you can win games and have those things out on the table.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, I want to just focus on is the effects of social media on the player's mental health. And again, this is at the middle school level, at the high school level, certainly at the college level. What do you talk to your players about as far as handling social media? Because everybody wants the perfect picture and the perfect video, and build these kind of dream scenarios that we all live in. But we all,
Yeah.
you and I both know most of that's just artificial. How do you talk to your players about how to manage social media for their own mental health and well being?
Yeah, we probably haven't talked enough about it specifically. I think we do talk about the bubble we live in, and I know it was one of my biggest issues the last probably 6 or 7 years, that I felt like everyone cared what was happening with our team. If we lost the game, everyone's judging. People got so much stuff going on, they're not paying attention. And that's the thing with social media. Like you can write a killer post, and you can have everything looking right, and you can get a bunch of hits within the first 3 hours you send it. And as soon as somebody hits like, they're on to the next thing 2 seconds later. And that was a big thing, I felt like, in how we approached even recruiting, and trying to follow players. And before we get to the process, like, who are the players that look like they're trying to sell that they've got it all going on, and who are the players that are kind of just like, if we don't see anything going on their social media, it kind of gets us excited,
Right.
because they're not relying on 200 likes to get them to go work out in the gym, or posting a bunch of videos about getting their workouts in. Like, I think there's a fine line between marketing yourself and trying to be seen by people, and then having it seem like that the reason that you're doing it is so you can post it and talk about it. And I think those things, they probably bang into each other a little bit. Like, I think everyone should do what they want to do and feel comfortable, but I also think from our standpoint, we found that our hardest workers and the girls that really love it are the ones that probably talk about it and post about it the least. And because it is hard work, and that's the piece from, there's a lot of commitment posts, and a lot of I've made my decision posts that make it seem like the work is done. And the hardest work you've ever had to do, if you really want to excel at this, you don't even know what that is yet. And I think that part is one of the pieces that we've tried to pay a lot of attention to. And like, we have a great amount of people that pay attention and care if we win, but the reality is it's a pretty small little blip compared to the what's going on in the rest of the world and what's really important. And I think that perspective, we probably need to be reminded of more often than not, because I remember going back to being an assistant. I thought, I'm recruiting really good players. If we lose this game at Indy on a Thursday night, we lose it by 12, we're going to lose recruits because we dropped a game we shouldn't. They don't know. And once I started figuring that out a little bit better, and really didn't care or think that stuff mattered, it's gotten a lot easier for me to just coach and try to win that game. And if we don't win that game, everything's going to be okay. And that's that's kind of, I think, what social media has created is the instant, I got to see if people like this thing or people are paying
Right.
attention to this, and it moves so fast. People move on to the next thing as quick as you can flick your thumb, and that judgment that we think is happening around us it's the mental piece that sits in us because we always feel like people are watching and judging us, and most people aren't taking more than a second to even pay attention.
One of the things that you mentioned was, being, the pseudo parents for these young women as they exit high school and make that transition to college, and being their parents away from home. And I'd love to hear, just whether anecdotally or just in general, what makes the kids that come to Oshkosh the most. What are the things that you look at, or the things that you identify that makes these kids successful, the ones that are most successful? What are the things that you've seen when they come into the
Yeah.
program that they've done in high school, middle school, that type of thing? Because I'd love for parents to hear this, because I think it's important, that they understand that, like you said, it's more than just basketball, and there's a whole balance of life. What's that look like, for you when you see kids come in?
Yeah, I mean, we've told the story a lot about the meetings that we have. Like we won't offer a player without having at least one of their parents in the room for 3, 4 hours and be able to just get a feel for how do things get talked about in their house. Like when we do lunches with recruits, our players that are come to lunch will eat with the recruit and give them an opportunity to ask questions and keep us away from it so they can answer honestly and talk about how we are as coaches. And we'll typically eat with the parents and siblings or whoever else comes along, and you can tell a lot in that hour and a half of lunch about how basketball, how sports, how school gets talked about in the house. And we've kind of made it a soft rule that if the parents talk about how many points their daughter scored or stats or all conference or awards to try to sell, like we can find all that stuff out by jumping on Google.
Right.
And if we've gotten to a visit, we've already probably decided your kid is either good enough to be here and we want them here, or they're really freaking close. So any parents that talk about that stuff tell us that the focus is on the wrong stuff, probably through the high school time. And I think, again, I think it's such a soft, or it's a tight balance of, we want parents that support their kids and are excited about their kids' success. We also want parents that support their kids' team regardless of what their role is, because no matter who comes in, we ultimately don't really know what their role is going to be when they get here. Like Casey Vale came in from a Greendale program that didn't win a lot of games, didn't play at all her first 2 years. If it was about playing time and role for her mom and her, A, she would be gone already. But B, she would have had a really disappointing start and been discouraged. And it was about working hard and trying to become the best she could be and trusting us. And now she's going to be a two-time All-American and probably have a chance to look at playing overseas. And she didn't play as a freshman or sophomore. And I just think we can learn a lot in how things are talked about. And regardless of how that is, most of the time, if it's talked about the wrong way, there's something in that player's head that puts too much value on points or awards or anything else. And ultimately, when you come here, we want you to help us win games. Obviously, we want you to have a 4-year experience. And, we've never had a player transfer out to go play somewhere else out of our program. Like, we've got an incredible retention for our level, and it's a 4-year journey to senior day. And it's going to have a lot of this and a lot of uh, peaks and valleys. There's never a straight line for people. And, so those conversations with parents are huge. And, our best parents are the ones that talk about just wanting their kid to have fun and enjoy it and make friends and have lifelong memories. Like, we're going to Greece with the team. It doesn't matter if you start for us or don't play that much right now, depending on what your role is. Like, that trip will be a bigger deal than any practice we've had, most games we've played. And that's what we're trying to find. And I think the families that do a good job of talking about the right stuff, focusing on working hard, enjoying it, growing from it, seeing the frustration and the disappointment as growing opportunities. And we've just been able to find really good families, and which is why kids have not really transferred out from here because I think we've done a good job telling them what to expect, but they've also come in with the right perspective on what this 4 years is going to mean for them as adults going forward. And you, whether you played 400 minutes or 1,000 minutes or 150 minutes, it hasn't affected who they've become when they've left here. And I think that's the part that makes it a little bit more special than anything they've done before this. And we get to take them to adulthood, and that's the part we take really seriously. And again, we see them every day. Parents worry about them, and I care about, are they having fun? Are they excited to come back for the next school year? Are they excited when Christmas break is over to come back and see their friends and their team again? And that makes it really simple if you don't worry about all the other stuff and the stats and the minutes and those things. And it's not easy to get people to understand that, but when they do, it's such a better experience.
One of the things, again, just knowing you and knowing the program and knowing some of the players you've had over the years. When we went up to Marquette a couple years ago, um, yes, of course, you played 2 games, but we also went to an arcade, and I tell you, I mean, those 18 to 22-year-old women, you'd think they just won in Las Vegas, as excited
Yeah.
as they were, and how much fun that they had. How important, Coach, is it to not just the basketball side of it, but really the fun side of it, and making sure that the kids have meaningful experiences, yes, but they also have fun, because you and I think we both know that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, there's 365 days a year that we fill with them, right? And we've played 20 games this year. We have 5 more guaranteed, some postseason. So we're doing all this work and building this group for 30-ish games a year, but we've got 330 days to fill around that. And getting them around the right people is super important. Like, we can go to arcades and go to a herd game and do those types of things, but if you're surrounded by people that you don't want to be around, none of that's fun. It's not fun to work hard when you don't like the people you're around. So like that's a huge piece of it. But yeah, like we try, one of our goals is to not overschedule our girls and give them the flexibility to decide what their day looks like. So like our workouts that we do outside of practice, like they text the assistant coaches or us and ask for them. Like, we want them to want to be in the gym, not to feel like they have to be. And I think that's one of the separations from our level to probably Division 1, where your time is kind of decided for you. And we're able to kind of block out. We've got a 3-hour block from practice and film and lift or scout or whatever it is for the day. And then the other 21 hours, like, we've got random stuff, at different times, like Christmas parties and things like that. But we also want them to be able to eat at a decent time at night and have time to study if it's during the day or after dinner or whatever that time is right for them, and start giving them the freedom to make some of those decisions. And then when it's time for basketball, lock in and play basketball. But I think the outside stuff is such a big piece of the experience that they'll remember. Like, we've got these the memory books that they did for the seniors right here, and a lot of pictures that I was not around because it's them at their house or the apartment or hanging out or going to a Brewers game or a Bucks game or whatever it is. And they've got 20 pages of pictures for each of these seniors that don't include jerseys and us up on the court. And, so I see our first responsibility of surrounding with people that you'd want to spend that time with, and then filling in the blanks for time. And our girls do a great job of getting together as groups. They've also got a couple different houses that have people over or do their own thing. And they've created an environment here where if you want to study that night, there's a group going to study at the library. There's a group that doesn't have to study that's watching The Bachelor. And there's all these different things going on that you can always find your people. And I think that's the biggest piece that I would hope that when players want to come wherever they want to play college basketball, like winning should be I think should be a piece of it. Like if you're going to put in all the time, like you should want to chase big stuff, but the next thing should be surrounding yourself with people that you want to spend your time with. And it's easier said than done on the players and parents side to find those people. And I think we've done a good job through how we've kind of looked at the recruiting process of finding people that we're confident you will be able to find people that you can connect with when you come here.
One of the things you as a coach have to deal with often and figure out is injuries. And certainly when an injury happens, even especially when it's a serious one, a player might feel isolated from her teammates because she's not participating in practice and at games, of course, but she is working on rehab. And as you know, that rehab journey is often it's a solo journey as far as the
Yeah.
physical side of it. How do you ensure that your players who are not on the active roster due to injury still stay connected with the team, connected with the program, and connected with the school and their daily life?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had too many here recently. Like Bridget Frelke is out this year with her third ACL tear. Devastating. She had an unbelievable year last year, gets hurt in one of the final their workouts before they left for the summer. Now she misses this year and she's not part of being on the floor for this team. Liv Peterson has been out for 2 years with some fairly serious chest issues. She had a major surgery for back in September. And it is that when you talk about mental health, like those are the most testing times. Like you came here to do this thing and this thing's been taken away. How do we still make sure that you enjoy this? And, we've, in those cases, we've tried to give them stuff to do. Like both of them run charts on our bench. Both of them are extremely valuable. I mean, if we had an hour, I could tell you stories about Liv last year as a freshman and wanting to help our team, and she tracks the play calls of the other team. She tracks how many stops we get in a row and make sure our team knows when we're running towards our third consecutive stop, which is a big deal for us. Like Bridget now sits on the end of the bench, and I'll ask the assistant coaches something and I'll give Bridget a side eye to see what she's thinking. And so that piece is part of it, but then there's still 23 other or 20 hours in the day that they can't go up and shoot or they can't do their thing where they're working out with our trainer. Obviously they're part of the group outside the court. But it is like the mental grind of a 9-month rehab, a 11-month rehab, even a 3-month or a 6-week
Right.
rehab.
Exactly.
And that separation that comes because you lose a lot of that chemistry and a lot of that connection. It is that is one of the toughest pieces. I think that and disappointment of what you thought it was going to be versus what it is. I think injury and that are the two toughest things that athletes deal with from our experience. And it's hard to give them exactly what they need in it. I know Bridget and I have had multiple talks, and she has plenty of times where she's gone, a couple weeks and been doing good, and then just has one of those days where like this rehab is going on forever, and I want to be out there, or I wish I could be out there to help, or we lose a game, and that feeling like if I could be out there, I could have maybe made a difference, and that just takes a lot of conversations and reminders that everything is going to end up and turn out okay and end up in a good place. It's just a different path than everyone else. And that's a hard one because we can't give them a quick fix on it. Like we're going to go upstairs and have a late practice today, and those guys are going to sit and watch, and we're going to talk about last night's win, but they had a different piece of it than the people that were in uniform, and that takes its toll, especially when you're having a good season and they don't get to be the exact same part of it. But it has been really important to us. They always travel with us. Everything's the same as far as how they're part of the group, except they can't put on a uniform. And I know there's some programs that don't travel injured player. Like I'll fundraise plenty of more money to make sure anyone that's injured comes on every trip and is part of everything that we do. So we will always make sure we do everything so that they feel like it's not a ton different than if they were out there playing. They just don't get that uniform on for those 2 hours.
Love it. One of the where I want to close today, Coach, is almost full circle back to where we started, and that is just the importance of mental health and therapy. You mentioned you go to therapy. I also go to therapy, and it's done wonders for me over the past 10, 15 years, and I continue to use it because I think it works if you work it. And a lot of times there's a stigma that goes with therapy, right? There's a stigma of, oh my gosh, something's broken with this kid or with this girl because she can't deal with it on her own. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you've done, you're really um, out there kind of leading the way saying, not only is it okay to go to therapy, but sometimes it's a really good thing.
Yeah. No, I 100% encourage it. I think I did not trust it. My wife, when I first met her and we were maybe still dating or engaged, she encouraged it, and I've become way more aggressive with it. And I think, like I said, I think what we find the most of that leads to the anxiety and the self doubt is you came to us as one of the best, and you showed up here, and things are not smooth, and you start to question who you are a little bit and your value because where you came from, you were one of the leading scorers, you were a captain, you were someone that led your team to state and whatever it was, and then you come here and it feels like you're not as good, and it's only because you're surrounded by incredibly talented other women, and it has nothing to do with your game. Like I always tell them, the best basketball version of you that there's ever been is who you are today. Like if today's you could go back and play high school you, today's you would destroy high school you. But high school you felt like the best player because relative to the rest of them, you were one of the best players.
Right.
And all that stuff is relative. And that's kind of one of the pieces of therapy. Like everything, your thoughts, your the thoughts where you doubt yourself, it's all relative. It's usually comparison. You're comparing yourself to either your best days or one of your friends or people on social media, or the idea of what you thought something was going to look like, and now it's different, and now it's disappointing. Like all that stuff is relative, and I think those are the biggest stressors that we see, and the stuff that leads to the lack of confidence and self-doubt. And for me, therapy has just been a chance to reset and try to get a little bit of like my answer is always I always feel better because I go into those sessions feeling like I'm the only one who thinks this way. Like
Exactly.
the way my self-doubt or my imposter syndrome, like I just told one of our girls the other day, like we have this trophy wall over here in my office, and I always think we're one loss away or one bad season away from proof that all this is fake, and that you actually were never good enough to earn that stuff. It just kind of happened lucky for you, but eventually you're going to get exposed and you didn't actually deserve it. So to go into a therapy session and just hear whether it's percentages of people or the therapist has dealt with someone that's had the same thoughts, like there's some comfort in knowing like that you're not the first person to doubt yourself that way. Like we, they've dealt with other people or worked with other people that have felt better after talking about it that way, and so that for me is the normalization of like you're not actually out on an island with the way you think and the way you doubt yourself and the way you feel like you're not good enough. And for me, there's a lot of comfort in that. I think everybody takes therapy a little bit different, but I mean, we talk about it all the time. I've helped multiple girls this year try to find a local therapist. Like and I hope our parents appreciate that that's important to us. Obviously, not every family probably thinks the exact same way about it, but it's become so much more accessible. And I just feel like the more we talk about it, the more people will be willing to take a look at it. And it's not for everybody. And I
Sure.
think but it's also a trained muscle. And I think I'm working with people that are used to training muscles and training their brain and training themselves to be better at something. And that's kind of what therapy and training your brain is you just need practice and you need some reps. And there's competitive things that I do with my brain to try to get it going in the right direction. So I'm already kind of dealing with a group that's used to that training piece. And we try to tell them that it's just another thing to train. Like you're going to go to therapy and the first time, like nothing's going to connect. And you're going to be like, yeah, you can tell me that's not true, but my brain tells me it's true. So right now it's true. And it
Right.
just takes time. It takes time and training for you to get to the point where you can recognize those thoughts and see that it's just thoughts. And again, I don't want to act like I know everything that I'm talking about, but I think after some time, I've had enough experience to know like that you do see the progress in it, and you do see your ability to step back and take yourself out of some of that. And then some days you can't. And I just think the more we talk about it, and the more we make sure they understand that it's not a lack of toughness that's got you feeling like this. And that's the thing that I think I always and that's the separation for me, that you used to have to be tough and deal with it and handle it yourself, myself included. And we've opened up the window now for us to all see like it's okay to struggle and talk about it, and you'll feel a lot better once you talk about it. And if talking about it makes you feel better, why aren't we talking about it?
And
And that's what we're trying to get across.
and I think it's a straight line, the indication of the success that the program has had, that your players have had over the last 5 years, in from, embracing that piece. It's more than a safe space to allow it, it's embracing it. And I don't think enough programs do that. I don't think enough kids are aware that those resources are available, but I believe it makes all the difference in the world on the self-esteem of these young women, because you and I both know that's the most important thing is, ensuring that they have a great experience, a positive experience, and come out to their side with great mental health and a great career, whether it be in athletics or life, whatever it is.
Yeah, and trying to gain perspective on what you're earning. And like I said, it's been a hard struggle for me this year because I know I've got talented girls that I'm not playing as much as I wish I could, and as much as I wish, and I know they want to. And honestly, they've earned. And that's the hard part for me, that having that playing time sometimes connected to self-confidence, and that feeling that someone doesn't believe you're good or doesn't believe in you. And here it's again, it's all relative to just how many good players we have. But if we can get the perspective on some of those disappointments, and some of those challenges, if dealt with the right way, can lead you to greater things, whether it's within the team next year, this year yet, as your career goes on, or just going forward. And maybe not trying to paint a picture ahead of time of what you think the ideal outcome looks like, and just letting the process go and enjoying what's happening in the moment and being present. And I think that's another piece that we've tried to focus on, is being present in the moment and enjoying whatever's in front of you, because most of our anxiety is worrying about stuff that's to come, or thinking back to stuff that's already happened, and trying to stay in the present. And if we're not playing as many minutes that we want, or if our struggle is with our shot, or how we're playing in practice, or feeling like we're not being noticed when we're playing well, if we are staying in the moment and just trying to get better in the moment, those opportunities may come, or we just might find out that it didn't work out exactly how we had hoped. But it's taught us that we're just going to keep doing the best we can in the moment that we have. And I think ultimately that's all we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to do the
Right.
best we can, trying to do the best we can in the moment we can. And I've got a bunch of players that if they went other places would play more minutes, but we like to think we're giving them an experience that they couldn't get other places too if they were playing more. So from a basketball standpoint, that's how we look at it. But if we're talking about life, we're all just trying to do the best we can right in that moment. And if we can get them to understand that that's really kind of all that's important, I think we've made some progress, and hopefully helped them for when this is over to become better adults and mothers and wives and daughters and aunts and uncles, or whatever all the things they're going to become someday.
Correct. Well, Brad Fischer, head coach, UW-Oshkosh, 19-1 so far this year, ranked number 5 in the nation. A big double overtime win over Whitewater last night. Coach, best of success the rest of the year. We'll continue to watch the Titan program. You know already how much we love your kids, and
Yeah.
how much we love the program. And best of success to you guys, and keep the train rolling.
Thanks a lot, Gary. This was fun.
My pleasure.